I thought that she was saying that because you can see that she's got like really sweaty underarms. You guys didn't see Brad's pits?
Welcome everybody to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and ignoring anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if that's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about Hey Dude.
Hey Dude
went... What?
He was responding to your call of Hey Dude with a response of Hey Jay.
I love the answer.
Oh, that worked so fucking well. It's ridiculous. Oh, boy.
You've infuriated Jay. Apologize.
I'm sorry, Jay.
Hey Dude went 65 episodes over 5 seasons on Nickelodeon. Today we're going to be talking about episode 1, Day 1 at the Bar None, originally airing July 14th, 1989. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the boys, Gordo, Ferg, Joe, and Nick. What's going on, guys?
Everyone get it out, get it out. Hey Dude.
Hey, dude. Better watch out for that man-eating jackrabbit and that killer cacti.
And we'll definitely touch on the intro when we actually get to it as well. This is the very first time we're doing any Nickelodeon show. Well, successfully doing a Nickelodeon show.
Time.
Oh yeah, the lost episode of Pete and Pete.
Which one day we might revisit, maybe.
Pay me money and you can
No,
see
I think
it.
we should leave that one in a box and burn it.
I'm just more mad about the painstaking time of watching it and taking notes for it to fall apart.
That was probably my best notes I've ever taken for an episode. I
Were
stopped
these-
taking
was-
notes after that.
Was Pete and Pete and Hey Dude around the same era? I imagine
Yeah,
they were.
they
right?
were.
Yeah, all those shows.
I think Pete
Give
and
or
Pete's a little
take
later.
year.
I didn't realize Hey Dude started in 1989.
Yeah, it's an 80s show. It's, I thought it was early 90s, but
It's barely an 80s show, and it
Yeah.
debuted like not even a full month before like Saved by the Bell first debuted.
I wonder if later on Casey Kasem shows up at the Bar None.
He's delivering a telegram.
Hey everybody, let's do the snake bite.
I don't know, this weird pedophile magician got sent here from parole.
Stop making it weird. Just stop making every episode weird. So
I'm sorry, that was Max's gimmick.
I've never
No.
heard you defend a character on a show more than you defend this magician.
it's
I
just
know, it
so
seems like you've got
bizarre
a
to me.
thing
It's
here.
just like you guys are so hard on him. Stop. And to go back, if you want to listen to our episode on Saved by the Bell, be sure to go back. S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find the links to everywhere. You can listen to us, all our social medias, S1E1pod on Instagram and Twitter and everything else. So give us some likes and follows and subscriptions and everything you can do on various sites. Go check those out. Yeah, but again, Nickelodeon, I think I've been saying for a long time, I've wanted us to do something to touch on that because we grew up on these shows. But we hadn't gotten around to doing any of them, on our show yet.
We've done plenty of Nick at Night, but nothing Nickelodeon original.
And there's a few other Nickelodeon shows, too, that I think eventually we'll tackle. Clarissa.
Welcome, freshman.
Welcome Freshman, for sure.
Salute your shorts.
Walter.
Yeah, there's a lot. And then I wonder, when we rate shows like this, do we go by how we think it is as a kid's show? Because these shows aren't made for 35, 36-year-old men.
We kind of have to, or they'll all get canceled.
Well, I mean, there's a few variables in how you should do it. Should you do it as a kid's show? And also, should you do it as being from the late 80s? You know what I mean? Like, you can't give it too much crap about, the way it looks and stuff like that, because it was just a product of the time. It's tough to put it into perspective as far as like a green light or cancel goes sometimes, just because there are so many things that are out of the show's control now because it's so old.
I really try to most episodes, and I don't want to say I'm completely consistent if we're being completely honest. I do try to think in the scope of what that show was for the time for the most part, because you can't assume everything's made for you at this time, modern age. We always joke 90s and stuff like that in certain episodes because humor changes, It's just really hard to look at everything in the scope of, would this be a great show in 2022?
I guess a good way to put it would be like, we would have to watch it from the perspective of like a board member for the network, right? Like, would this meet
That's a
its
good call.
metrics? Like,
I
would
thought that's
this?
what we were doing.
Well, yeah, right. But I mean, like, we don't do that all the time. You know what I mean? Like, there are plenty of shows that probably, MASH, I think we canceled that overall. But, like, metrically speaking, it was a pretty heavy hitter. And that's why it stayed on the air. But
Right, but even then, I guess when you look at it in that perspective, the networks get things like that wrong too. There are plenty
for
of shows
sure, yeah.
that,
True.
they check all the boxes and we're rating a lot of things too, like something like MASH, and not to get too away from talking about Hey Dude, which we'll do in a moment. But like MASH was a show that, we deal primarily sitcoms, comedies, and MASH's thing is it's like gimmicked as a sitcom, but it really teetered a line of being dramatic as well. And then the humor didn't always fit with the situations because it was like heavy. Me and Gordo both passed it, but we should move on and not. If you want to listen to MASH again, go back and listen to our MASH episode. That's just for right now. It'll be our last episode before this one, so go check that out.
My 2 cents for this one was: would I show this to a kid, and what would a kid think about it? You know what I mean? Like, that's a different way I looked at this show, where you're like, okay, there's some nostalgia because I loved this show as a kid, but it's not something is in your brain like Saved by the Bell. So you can sort of disassociate yourself a little bit. Be like, if I showed this to my 11-year-old nephew, I loved it when I was 11, would he? Right? Like, that's a interesting way to put it, because then you're sort of taking yourself out of it and trying to get the nostalgia goggles off a little.
Yeah, but even then, like, you're thinking of what was fun. We talked about this before. What's funny 25 years ago versus what's funny now, changes with kids. That'd be like what our parents liked as a kid versus what we liked as kids. Things change.
Like one of the first lines at the beginning of the show when they introduced the new family is talking about a video store.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If I showed my nephew that, he'd be like, Uncle Mike, what the hell's a video store?
Yeah.
Uncle Mike, take that stupid hat off.
No, Ferg, you should take your stupid hat off.
I wish I could, but it's stuck there forever now, I think.
It's
for
sewn
those,
on like Joe Dirt's wig.
For those just listening, Gordo and Ferg, in honor of Hey Dude, are both wearing cowboy hats right now. Ferg's is made for his head when he was 18 years old, though. And if you check out our videos, which will eventually be on our Instagram, S1E1 Pod, you'll get to see that. But let's just dive right into this episode here. So the show starts with Ted. He's like the main character. He's riding in the back of like this old green pickup truck, and he's driving through like a kind of desert-like area, but it's the ranch, as we come to find out. And when he arrives, he hops out of the back of the truck and he thanks this old guy for driving him in, Mr. Wilson, I believe. Right off the bat, I was like, that's a little weird, right?
Like, why didn't his parents drop him off?
It's like, I just dropped off my friend Max, so I might as well pick you up and drop you off too.
I was trying to not go there. I'm glad you did.
I wasn't going to until Jay made that's kind of weird, because I didn't think of it that way. I thought of it more as like Stand By Me, like, thanks for the ride, mister.
It just seemed weird that you just hop in the back of a old man's pickup truck. I mean, I guess obviously they know each other, but
yeah, I guess because you get the
magician.
How far of a ride was it though? He's sitting on the bed of the pickup truck.
Well, they say it's a tourist ranch eventually, right? So I imagine it's not too far off the beaten path from the city and civilization. It's probably like 20 minutes outside of town or something.
Yeah, I
Also-
think he's a local.
Also, too, it wasn't a desert-like environment. It was the desert. They're driving through a desert.
Great. Thank you for announcing that with such enthusiasm.
Gordo, that comment was as dry as the desert, so thank you for putting all the effort in.
Dry eyes? Wow.
probably from the
Red Science
desert.
was restaurant.
And then how old would you guys say Ted is, roughly?
13, 14.
I was thinking a little older than
Me
that,
too.
but like
I was thinking
maybe
like 15, 16.
Yeah, I would
I'm
think
thinking high
right around
school
there.
age, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. You couldn't
I don't
work.
think any of them are 16 because, as far as I remember, none of them drive at any point on the show.
I don't think any of them ever leave the property, though. on
And they
the
have
show.
horses to ride.
But yeah, so all right, so either way, young teens, so he runs up to a building at this dude ranch and says it's like a kind of a bulletin board. It says Bar None News, and he takes this envelope off the board, and this is when he finds out that he's going to be senior staff. I don't know what the letter actually was, just like a roster list and what your job title was, but that's how he found out he was senior staff.
They give you a little bit too of exposition here too, because when he gets out of the car, the guy's like, "Have a great summer. Don't work too hard." So right away they're putting it like, okay, this guy's going to be here all summer long, and it's clearly a job, not a vacation.
Yeah, it's
sort of place.
kind of like summer camp. I wasn't really sure exactly like where it toyed that line. Like it's a
He's also way
tourist
too
attraction.
excited to show up to work.
Well,
Well,
I
he-
mean, he's a kid. He's a kid, and he's going away for the summer. I mean, you don't know.
That's not work like we go to, too. He's basically going to like a dude ranch.
Yeah, he's going to like ride horses and stuff, which is something he's like passionate about. It's not like when you wake up at 2 a.m. to go to the airport. I mean, I assume that's not exciting.
That's not your passion, Jay?
It was not where I thought my life would be. He's just standing there as he's looking at this paper, and a limo pulls up, and out from the back of it, a girl who's about the same age as him exits. We come to find out her name's Brad. Ted runs up to her and offers to help her out with like her bags, but she's good, and he's just kind of walking along with her. But I was actually at that moment, the vibe she gave, I thought coming out of the limo with like the fancier clothes, I thought she would have taken the offer. I thought her character would have been a little different right off the bat, like a little more snobby.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, she shows up in a limo.
Well, yeah, that's why
No
I thought.
desert. It's weird. Like,
Yeah, I thought the offer for the bags would be more like she felt entitled, but I guess we learn a little bit about her right there, just in the. No, I got it.
This
how
whole
rich?
scene
How
is-
rich could she be if she's working a job? Like,
Well, it's not.
that's
Like-
the weird thing.
I mean, it's a summer getaway job, and it's something. We find out more about her character as it develops. But I mean, if it's something you're passionate about or things like that, I mean, doesn't mean that because her parents are rich, she has like generational wealth and never needs to work again.
This whole scene, by the way, too, is pretty much lifted completely from the first Police Academy movie. Ted is Steve Guttenberg, and Brad is Kim Cattrall, where it's like, she's rich, she comes out of the limo, he's the goofy guy who's been there longer than her, ends up getting it. Like, it's a weird parallel. I know we bring up Police Academy movies a lot for
No,
some
you
reason.
you
Yeah, I was
bring
gonna
up
say
Police
you.
Academy movies a lot.
Police Academy movies are in my brain, like, burned in for some
Does
reason.
that mean
Around
Mr.
the same
Ernst
time
is
as
Commandant
this.
Lassad?
Punky.
Quick side note, too. I was really surprised to find out that this show was actually filmed in Arizona.
Yeah.
There's plenty of places in Southern California that look exactly like this, but they actually went to Arizona for some reason.
So, if you look in some of the scenery, like later on in the episode, it looks like they're in front of a green screen.
No,
They're not.
See,
They
I didn't
don't
get that
set
at any
vibe
point.
now.
Oh,
No,
I
yeah.
got that. Is like at the end of the episode, we'll get to it. Like, but when they're trying to get the horse, but it looks like they're in like a painted.
Also,
Like
it's the late 80s. It would be a blue screen.
Yeah, there was never a point where I really got that vibe. Everything looked pretty authentic. Actually, in this scene here, when the two of them are talking, it's extremely windy. So, like, their hair's flying around. I was kind of surprised that they even got decent audio out of that.
If you
It's
look
funny
up
you bring
to-
up decent audio because there's times where I think the audio is terrible in this episode. Did you guys get that? Like when they're in the bunks later, I could really hear Danny.
Really, I didn't really have any problems with that either.
I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't notice it. But one thing you were going to say about the sets, Gordo, at least in 2014, but I watched a video of people exploring. The entire sets are still there.
Yeah, it's like sad
okay.
because they're
Field trip.
unkept. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dilapidated. It's kind of like Spawn's Movie Ranch or like Jonestown or whatever, where like they just let the elements sort of take it over, but there's still pieces of it up. It's interesting. I'd love to see it, though.
Interesting.
I mean, if I was ever in that rough area of Arizona, I would for sure check it out. But I've seen pictures, and it's these sets 30 plus years later, just abandoned. So it's not. I think it would upset you more than it would excite you if you checked it out.
I think we need to do a road trip.
To Arizona?
It's such a
Arizona.
long drive.
Dude ranch is still a thing. I never like hear about them anymore.
I think so. Yeah, I think if you go to like Tombstone and stuff, they still do like the street shows where it's like, move it, partner. And then you get a sarsaparilla.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too different than not long ago when we were in Dallas. We were at the stockyards at Fort Worth, and those were, very old time Texas-y, and there's kind of a lot of that kind of stuff going around. So, and they had cows there and stuff. Bulls, actually, a lot of bulls.
Longhorns.
But yeah, to go back to the episode, Ted starts walking along with Brad, and he introduces himself to her, and she asks if he works there, and he's like, yeah, senior staff. And he goes, it's me, Ted. When he shows her the paper, it's like, she's supposed to know that there's a Ted there, like when he announces, hey, it's me, Ted.
This is also one of those classic things where it's like, don't give certain people. This is like a Dwight Schrute moment, right? Where, like, some people can't handle the tiniest bit of power and they become a fucking nightmare. Like, Ted is like, This dude's like, oh, I'm senior staff. He doesn't know what it means. Nobody else knows what it means, but he's lording it over these people.
Yeah, he's very proud of his accomplishment there. He
Doesn't that just mean? I know none of them seem to know what it means, but that just means you're the longest staff member.
Probably, yeah, it's probably all it means. You've just been around a while. And he goes on to tell her that he's someone that the rest of the staff looks up to. They go to him for advice. And he continues to kind of just talk himself up until he backs into just like this piece of wood, which makes him lose his balance completely, and he falls into a trough. And the cut of him falling in, it's so not fluent with the shot of him initially backing into the wood. It's like they did him stumbling, and then they just cut to the trough and him just going, okay, jump in. And he just jumps backwards.
Yeah, because he does the whole like, whoa, 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 whoa thing first for a while. This is very much like the Cactus Jack Abdullah the Butcher match, where everybody falls in the trough and then they throw Missy Hyatt in it. Remember that match?
Yeah, just like that.
It is just like that. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, falling into the trough. Yeah. So she walks off, and it's just a shot of him kind of sitting in the water, and that's what transitions into the intro. And you guys touched on it as soon as the episode started. The theme song, for those of you unfamiliar with Hey Dude, it's very iconic song.
Still knew every word. I'm sure every one of us knew every word.
A little wild and a little strange. Anyone else?
When you make a home out on the rain.
Yippee-ki-yay. What? That's the thing with that voice. What's the secondary voice on that track?
Because it's modulated to sound deeper.
Yeah, it's like, why did you need that? Yeah.
I went deep on a rabbit hole for the guy who wrote this song, because I was like, there's got to be other credits. There's got to be other stuff. His name's Dale Jarvis, right? So I do some digging. And not finding much. His IMDb listed he's only a composer of this. So I go to Discogs. I'm like, this guy's got a fairly interesting name. I'm going to find something. I'm pretty sure this is the guy because it sounds like him on the song. But he's got one listed credit, which is a song called Fat Like Santa that he put out in the 1980s that I listened to like 4 times today. That is a novelty song. That is half Christmas song. And a half story about this guy's mother telling him that he's just skin and bones and he needs to gain more weight. And that he does like country voice Christmas things. And at one point he goes, I'm hungry. It's so fucking awesome. So everybody look up Dale Jarvis, Fat Like Santa. All of a sudden the YouTube page is going to jump from like 9 views to 19 views. And he's going to lose his goddamn mind.
I knew I'd make it one day.
I finally fat like Santa. Yeah, the I'm hungry is so good. We need to isolate that clip.
And in the intro itself, other than the song, it's just like a horseshoe, and the horseshoe spins around, and every time it spins, like an image of a different cast member pops up. Which actually I thought for 89 was pretty good graphics. It was because I'm watching it and it looked pretty good.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, no complaints there. Like, looked standard for what you would have in that time period.
It was simple and to the point, and we always kind of debate back and forth how we like our intros for our shows. This is right up Ferg's alley. Ferg likes a good intro song.
I do like a good intro. And I noticed, too, when it said cast and it says alphabetical order on the bottom.
Yes, that's you know what's funny? That's something I remember from being a kid. Like, it's a weird thing about the show that stands out. It was like they didn't want to upset anyone. So, like, just so you know, we're not saying anyone's the star. We're just going to go in alphabetical order here.
It's good. No one can get mad at that point, right? Even the dog gets credit.
Yeah.
Cassie, yeah.
Yeah, but he gets a Professor and Marianne kind of thing. It's not right.
With the dog? At this point, it should be in memoriam of Cassie the dog died, I'm guessing, 1992 or whatever.
Yeah, probably. But it's not one of those things you want to think about. Yeah.
Hang in there, pup.
I don't get my kids don't get residuals.
And he has like great grandkids. I mean, but
my great grandpaps were screwed in the contract.
So the next scene, we have another boy, Danny, is getting to the ranch, and that's where him and Ted greet each other for the first time this summer. And they start by doing this like intricate handshake that they have. I don't know why I thought it was funny, but in the middle of the handshake, Ted's like, remember this? It's like, clearly he remembers it. He's been doing this handshake with you for the last 10 seconds.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, they're in the middle of doing it. Remember that thing we're doing currently? It's like, oh shit, I do. That's real cool.
I was thinking... At least in this scene, they have no chemistry whatsoever, the two of them.
No, but I think there's a very specific reason why I'll touch on in a second. But thinking about the handshakes, I remember there was a point in time, I know at least Gordo and I had a handshake for a moment.
Yes.
Right around those like early 2000s when everyone on the Red Sox had like a different handshake. I remember like emulating that for a bit.
Yes, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, butterfly, up, down. I remember it still.
Losers.
You just mad you didn't have a secret handshake.
Oh, someone's mad he's not part of the handshake.
You guys were just so inspired by Mariah Carey's Butterfly at the time that you were like, let's do a secret dance for everybody for this.
Well, that was
Joe
the
and I
actual
used to just touch tips.
steak tips.
Yes, steak tips.
Now I just picture them every time they hang out. They have to go and buy steak tips to go and greet each
I go,
other.
hey, Joe, remember this? Woo!
Well, after that picture of Ferg and I frauding came out that time.
And then to get back into this episode, Ted then asks Danny if he remembered, and then Danny's like, yeah, and he goes to his backpack and pulls out food his mom made for Ted, which is fry bread, which I looked into because I didn't know if that was a real thing or not. And fry bread is basically like a fried dough.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's like a Native American thing.
It's not sweet like fried dough.
Yeah, it's a little more, I would assume more, I don't know. I guess if you cross like pizza dough with fried dough or something like that.
Right, which
Well,
then
if
Ted's
you-
like, did you try putting marinara sauce and cheese on it? He's like, yeah, it was like a pizza. I was like, that's literally what a pizza
That's
is.
what a
It's not
pizza
like a
is.
pizza. You made a pizza.
You're right.
It's like, hey, remember that time I told you to make a pizza?
This is, by the
Danny
way, when,
is very wooden. He is not a great actor.
Right,
No
so
offense,
that-
Danny,
they're-
wherever you are.
that's what I was going to say when Ferg touched on it earlier. The reason they have no chemistry is Danny can't act. At
They're
all.
all like that, though.
No,
It's
not
I
as
think,
bad as Danny.
Christine Taylor's the only person on the show who can act.
I
And
think
Mr.
the
Ernst.
the
Mr.
rest of
Ernst,
them are
yeah.
they're fine though. Like Brad and Ted, they're fine.
No, Brad rubbed me the wrong way that entire episode. Also, Brad and Ted kind of have the same face. Did anybody else notice that?
Yeah,
It's
I did.
it's like Ted in a wig is Brad. It was weird.
I would,
They didn't have that big of a
oh,
budget
senior
for the
staff, you say?
Girls.
Do you think it was a Jack and Jill situation where someone played both characters the whole time?
No, I will say, if you don't think they're very good actors, it would make sense that Danny never did any more acting. But Brad did have one more role to her credit. Did anybody look up what her other acting role was?
She's the only one I didn't look up.
Same. I started clicking through. I didn't get to her though, I guess.
She was in a movie 1 year after this show ended called Danger Zone 4, Mad
I
Girls,
did see that. Yeah.
Bad Girls. And I'm assuming this is a precursor to Busty Cops or something, and I will be checking it out. And hopefully the three
Mr.
preceding
Ernst
movies.
is in a lot of those shady movies too.
Yeah, Mr.
Really?
Ernst is definitely like the sergeant at Busty Cops and stuff. He's in a ton of amazing stuff. Like he's in Seinfeld, he's in Justified, and he's in The Late Shift, the movie about the Tonight Show. But he's definitely in a lot of like it's 11:30 and Cinemax is on type movies.
But there's a reason why only one person from this whole cast is successful and in a lot of movies, like actual movies.
Well, Danny was married to Ben Stiller for a short period of time, but it didn't work out, and his career went right down.
Danny, by the way, also we find out in that scene is Hopi Indian or Hopi Native American. I'm sorry.
He does get better, by the way. He was my favorite character when I watched as a
Yeah,
kid.
I do remember liking him when I watched it like back in the day.
Well,
I
'cause
thought
he's
he
the
was
one-
cool because he called Mr. Ernst Mr. E.
I love when you're a kid, that shit is super cool. It's like,
There's
hey, Mrs. S. You're like, only a cool person would say something like that.
There's just something about like that character because he's the level-headed one, but not in a. He's not playing it like straight and nerdy. He's just playing it a little. He's just more reserved and cool versus Ted, who's just an obnoxious, and he's supposed to be obnoxious. You're not supposed to like hate him, but he's gonna be the
He's the Zach
antagonist.
Morris.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's the rambunctious one. He's like the Budnick. He's the classic.
he's the one who gets everyone into trouble.
Can I just say that I thought that Budnick and Donkey Lips were on this show? Because I
What?
seriously don't remember this show that well. I remember watching it back in the day, but I must have crossed the Lucha Shorts and this.
Well, they were on back to back all the time with each other, so that does
Yep.
make sense. Like it would be 2 hours of this and then 2 hours of Slit Your Shorts.
Gotcha. Yep. That might be why.
Yeah, your memory bank just kind of mushed it all together as one thing.
Especially because I'm assuming the last time anybody watched an episode of either of those shows for us was well over 2 decades ago.
Well, your assumption is wrong, my friend.
Did you recently watch all of Salute Your Shorts?
I've watched plenty of Salute Your Shorts over the years, especially the Zeke the Plumber episode.
Well, I mean, Zeke the Plumber is a classic. He can smell your fear.
Zeke the Plumber didn't have a nose.
Fuck, I've been caught.
We will eventually do a Salute Your Shorts episode. 100%.
R.I.P. Ugly.
Oh yeah, recently too.
Aww.
And
Forgot.
so in this conversation between Ted and Danny, Ted starts telling Danny a little bit about the girl that he met earlier, Brad, how she looks like she's never been around a real horse before, and she's going to need a lot of extra attention. And that he has this need to make all the guests feel like they're around a genuine cowboy, especially the pretty one, which is an interesting remark now that you guys said that they look similar. And,
He's something about that girl. I just can't pin him.
And especially since
look
he's
again.
senior staff. Again, he mentions the senior staff thing. Which
He wants
Danny,
to give her the senior staff, if you know what I mean.
He wants to break her wild horse, unbridled passion. We can go a lot of
this
places
is
here.
a kids show starring minors.
Well, not in 1982 when she was
They're
in
ranchers, not
Babe
minors,
Zone 4
idiot.
or whatever.
So Danny asks him, what is senior staff anyways? Ted assumes that it basically just means that he's being groomed to run the ranch one day.
That is not the case.
No.
This kid is sorely underestimating what senior staff means.
Mm-hmm.
And
Also,
at
it's
this
such
point,
a little kid thing, like a kid dream, where it's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, I want to run a tourist ranch that's only open 3 months a year. Like, oh, awesome. That will probably not be easy to do.
well, if you get paid for a year's worth, then that's not a bad gig.
Yeah,
No,
that's
sure. I mean, like, look,
doable.
you see the ice cream places and stuff that close all winter and then open up from May to September or whatever, right? They obviously make enough money in that time. But a ranch is a lot of overhead. You gotta take care of horses all year long. You don't have to feed the ice cream.
Yeah, you
machines in
don't get to
November.
just leave the horses there and be like, all
But
right.
being in Arizona, I'm sure there's other stuff they can do all year round. It's not like they're gonna get 10 pounds of snow. Like,
No, they all go and work at the iced tea factory.
Careful, guys. The forecast is calling for 10 pounds of snow.
10 feet. I don't know why I said pounds.
And someone starts knocking at the door, and it's Melody, and she's asking if everyone in there is decent before she walks in, which is, I mean, I guess courteous, but in my head it was like, that's your instinct every time you walk in. It's a screen door. If they were just walking around naked, they would probably have the door shut.
Something had to have happened in the past, right? When she just walked in on Danny
Yeah.
butt naked. Like, ah!
Well, she walked in on Danny and Ted doing their other special dance with each other.
Well, yeah, so as Danny goes to open the door for her, this is when Ted hides, behind the door. And when she walks in and starts, to say hello to Danny, they just go, sandwich! And
They
kinda-
knighted the Roxbury.
Yeah,
there.
I was
exactly.
gonna
It's
say,
like-
they netted the Roxbury her, a.k.a. they sexually assault Ben Stiller's wife. Ben Stein's wife.
not Ben Stein, Ben Stiller.
Who is she? Because she looks familiar.
You'd
like,
know her
Christine
from
Taylor.
The Wedding Singer. You'd know her from Dodgeball. You'd know her from Zoolander. And she was Marsha Brady on the Brady Bunch movies.
She is
Also
leaps
a
and bounds,
Seinfeld
yeah,
one,
the
too.
most famous person on this show.
Yeah, she's the one who's had the most successful career. Mr. Ernst is in a lot of stuff too, but she's probably by far the most famous person.
She's
on
in
this
real
show.
stuff.
Right. But I really do not want to glance past this sandwich situation. What
No,
on
this is
earth?
rough.
This is they're like, the writer's like, we just need a funny little thing they do to joke around with her when she walks in. Like, oh, we know. We'll just have both of these boys run up and dry hump her when she walks in the room.
They're just
Yeah.
full of fry bread, and they're young and they don't know what's going on.
That would be the reality. Everyone would be fucking. Their kids away from their parents at a dude ranch.
So
mean,
someone
like-
with a hockey mask shows up.
Yeah, I know,
It's
right?
like-
I mean, you're probably right for it doesn't seem like they have a chaperone inside
Just,
of these bars.
just
they
the
just
one
got
woman.
Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that
We
each
all know how she
cabin-
got her name.
No,
I'd watch
how?
out.
Mr. Ernst, I'll
looks
shade
she,
you around
yeah,
this.
she looks like she could kick ass. She's a tough one.
She's
Look at her.
actually
She-
Ferg.
she's
One of her
weird.
most
She
recent
is-
credits is she's in an episode of Vice Principals, but her scene was deleted.
Oh man. But she has 2 different IMDb's, and it's like the name's different, but it's the same person.
That's interesting.
Maybe someone made a fake one.
I thought maybe they replaced her and I never noticed, but it's the same person.
Interesting.
One sec. It's not like a huge difference. It's the same name. It's just like one's the short version.
Anyway, but yeah, granted, these kids would likely be having sex and stuff, right? As the kids do when they're away with no parents and stuff around. That's still weird that they double dry hump sandwich for the girl, though. That's not, that's weird.
And Danny tells Melody that Ted is senior staff now. And she's excited for him. And then also, like with Danny, has no idea what that means. Danny jokes that he thinks it's when the president gets sick that he will take over.
Yes, that's it.
And with Danny's acting, boy, did that joke hit.
Yeah,
When the
all I thought of
president's
was,
around.
Danny's kind of dumb too.
I couldn't, because of his acting, I couldn't tell if he was mocking Ted or if he just really didn't know.
Yeah. It was just very flat. Like every line was very, say this line and then react. And he's just, they needed someone to portray a Native American. And I believe Danny is actually Mexican in real life, if I remember correctly. He's not a Native American.
If you looked at the credits as the end of the episode rolls, there's like 6 people. It's just repeating the same names over and over again. It apparently did not have a very large, not staff,
Crew?
yeah, crew at all. So there's nobody there being like, Danny, you should really play it like this instead. It's just like fucking 4 people in a cabin in Arizona with a camera.
We talked about the off season of a dude ranch. It's like, how can we make more money? Let's rent out the ranch to film a show.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's what they did, and that's why they had to build the sets, because there still were some guests there, and they didn't want to disrupt them. So they've only shot a few things at the actual ranch. Like, whenever they go to the swimming pool, that's at the actual, like, resort part. But the resort's, like, kind of posh. It's not the ranch from, this is, like, a real, it's a movie I'm looking for here. Billy Crystal.
Oh,
City
City Slickers.
Yes. It's not like a City Slickers type of ranch.
Slickers.
The cow's name is Norm.
Which I think we've brought up a few times before, too, how much we all love City Slickers 1 and 2.
So while the 3 are all in the bunk talking, they start to hear some noise from outside. And they all run out. And there's just like a horse that's acting pretty wild that's being tended to by some, I don't know, whatever those people were. They're just some random cowboys trying to hold the town
Horse
for a while.
wranglers.
Wranglers.
But were they all staff?
No, they're wranglers, like the jeans.
I prefer Kirkland's.
I got the idea that he just hired people. Because Lucy says something about it too.
Right, and that's where we actually first meet Lucy at this point, and she's like the first adult that we meet that like works there. When she first greeted them, did she call them Teen Titans?
I
Teen
believe
Titans?
so.
I may have missed
Teen
that, but I
Titans.
mean, alliteration and they're teenagers. I mean, I don't think it'd be too weird.
I was trying to think, like, Ferg, was the Teen Titans a thing in 1989?
I believe they were. The show didn't exist, but I believe in the comics there was. So yeah, because Cyborg still had his afro then and stuff. Yeah, they exist.
So I'm wondering if like maybe one of the writers just decided to pull from that, because I thought it was a really random reference for this older cowgirl to call these kids the Teen Titans. But she tells Ted that if he even thinks about it, she's going to grind him into hamburger meat, because she sees him eyeing the horse and knows him well enough to know he only cares about 2 things. One wears tight jeans and the other wears horseshoes.
And it's the same thing. It's Ted's girlfriend, the horse lady.
Yeah.
Ted, I've missed you.
The horse sounds a lot like the dog.
There's a lot of crossbreeding going on. This ranch. I also have one impression, and it's somewhere between Scooby-Doo and Mr. Ed.
Speaking of impressions, Jay, how's your Bobcat Goldthwait impression
Do
going?
you think I work on this in my spare? I think we did
You
one
should
episode
be.
where
You had homework.
we
You
talked
did
about
promise,
it. Yeah.
You promised our audience.
I never promised them anything. I think
did.
I told you guys
I think you
privately that
did.
like I tried doing the voice and failed epically.
I think you're afraid of getting good at it because there was a solid year there where, like, if you weren't saying anything, you were doing the predator noise. Like, it became a tick.
Yeah, I forgot.
You
I
couldn't
did
stop
that.
doing it. We'd be driving somewhere and, like, there'd be a lulling conversation. You'd hear, like, like, Jay, what the fuck are you doing?
I forgot I used to do that.
You still do it sometimes.
Now go right into Bobcat.
So if we keep Gordo, I
can't.
love this mission because if you keep doing it for the rest of like the next year, every time Jay's at work and no one says anything, you're like, I'm vegetarian. People are gonna be like, what the fuck, man?
There's Yeah, I tried it once in the car. I'm like, this is bad. This is not where my voice is supposed to go.
Did you look around after, like, did anybody hear me?
Windows all the way up. It was not much better than Gordo going, I'm a talking bunny.
That was hilarious.
If you want to, and for those of you who are very confused right now, go back and listen to our unhappily ever after episode that we had done a few months back at this point now. But
of course, from Police Academy.
Yeah. And essentially, to go back, this is Lucy acknowledging that Ted wants to ride this wild horse and that it's too dangerous. So she wants him to, be as far away from the situation as possible.
Why would you bring a wild horse onto a dude ranch that's made for tourists?
Because it's going to get broken.
Yeah,
they say
gonna,
that they hired horse breakers.
Yeah, so they're going to have professionals take care of it and get the horse ready to be around, regular people. And it's
dual
probably
purpose. If the horse doesn't get broken, you've got horse steaks for the guests and glue for the next year.
No, I mean, I just always thought that was like a process that was a hard process. Like, they couldn't be around other horses. Like, granted, I'm no horse guy.
And he
I
wanted
don't know.
other
I'm
horses.
looking
He was in
I'm
his
looking
own
at a
tent.
cowboy right now, and I'm like, there's a horse guy right there.
I was going to say, you know how you know you're not a horse guy? Because you just said horse guy, which I'm pretty sure is not the proper nomenclature for this.
My grandfather was a rancher, believe it or not, from Oklahoma, but he, I don't think that you're supposed to have wild horses around other horses because broken horses learn.
It wasn't around the other
wild
horses. It was by itself.
It was by itself.
It was in a corral by itself.
All right.
You
I just think it's dangerous.
Gordo dressed like a cowboy before? Because I feel like this is not like
He
an
did. He was
unusual-
dressed as a cowboy when the cops tackled him at the 4th of July party.
The one time Gordo actually didn't do anything wrong, and he still got it.
There's nothing funnier than being arrested in costume. It's like, Jay, you've been there too, haven't you?
What, being arrested for not doing anything?
Well, that, but
Arrested in costume, he said.
Oh, arrested in costume. Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I was. I was once arrested dressed as Roddy Piper.
I once drove by Ferg as he was passing a field sobriety test dressed like MC Hammer. Or what was it?
And you know what? I don't even
Hammer.
want to even get into all of these stories that we just unveiled because we got to give the listeners something to stay around for. So let it be known we have a plethora of wild stories that we've been through over the years.
There were a lot of stories, and we've all had some weird run-ins with the police.
So keep listening. Yeah, now we're just old and boring and talking about Nickelodeon shows while we're in our late 30s. But yeah, once upon a time, we're some pretty fun dudes. But so Lucy also informs Ted that, it's strict rules by the new owner that, only the wranglers will be breaking these horses. And Ted wants to know if this guy knows anything about horses at all. And Lucy hasn't met him yet, but judging by his letters, seems like a man who knows about ranching. Again, dated reference now because you think back to, telephones existed. I don't know why he'd be writing letters, but
Yeah, why didn't they use telegrams?
yeah, telegrams, I guess also, because the other show that we tackled from 1989 not long ago, telegrams are still very much being used.
Exactly.
He's like an accountant from New York, though. You think he has access to like a fax machine, probably, and has multiple telephones?
I was just going to say fax machine seems more appropriate.
Yeah, but
Plus, if he
who
made this
who
purchase
probably
without being
doesn't have a
there?
fax machine? Lucy.
Yeah.
Sure, but if he bought this ranch and he hasn't seen it in person, that means he had to do paperwork and stuff, which you'd have to do through fax, because you have to have signatures.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
he's communicating with somebody through, I'm guessing, fax.
Yeah, but the last owner, because when Ted first gets there, he's looking for a guy named Joe, who was
That's
the
true.
original owner. So he probably did all his business with him.
And Joe doesn't tell anybody that he's leaving, doesn't reach out to the... I guess it's weird to reach out to a bunch of kids in the middle of the year and be like, hey, it's me, your old boss. I sold the business. It's like, okay.
Don't
left
let
you
anybody
dinner
sign
now.
your checks.
Is that a heavyweights joke?
Yes.
I feel like Heavyweights has come up a couple times, too.
Well, if we're going to talk about Ben Stiller, you might as well make the connection at some point.
To that
But,
great movie, Wedding Singer, that we all saw in the theater together.
That was a great time when we all saw Wedding Singer together.
Moving on.
Is that why I didn't get invited to Canada? Are you holding that grudge that
We
long?
invited you to Canada, but I was not invited to go see The Wedding Singer with you guys. That's fine. That movie didn't turn out to be one of my all-time favorite movies or anything.
Jay found out that he wasn't invited and was like, "Oh my god!"
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
And so, anyways, this is when we first find out about Mr. Ernst, and it cuts to him right after that, and he pulls up in a Jeep. That the horn was that a loose version of the theme to the song?
Yeah, it seemed like a couple bars off.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a close version. Because at first I was trying to peg what song it was. I'm like, I was like, what is this? And I played it back a couple times. I'm like, I think it's just the intro.
There's some weird interstitial music and stuff too. Like when Ted first comes up in the beginning, we didn't talk about this, but they're playing like a Tex-Mex blues song. It's like do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Type of song. You're like, all right, I guess, sure.
So I think this show would have benefited from a laugh track of all shows.
I don't know.
And they annoy me sometimes, but with some of the wooden acting, I think it would have helped.
I just think the outside, it wouldn't fit because they're outside. So it doesn't sound like, I don't know. To me, it wouldn't place right to have the laugh track when they're out in the ranch. But there's I don't know.
Well, it's funny
They've
you
done it in
say
other
that
shows.
because when I had that thought, it was when they were in the cabins and like they were just like talking. And everything was super quiet. And I'm like,
Yeah,
there
all
should
right.
be a
I think the laugh
right
track
there.
would work. I mean, it doesn't make any less difference than a laugh track when somebody's at a department store.
Yeah. So going back to Mr. Ernst, he pulls up in a Jeep. He's with his son, and we cut to them when they first park, and they're kind of still off on their own. And his son is his name's Buddy. Mr. Ernst, he's very excited. This is the first time he's like seeing his own ranch, and he's talking to his son, and he's like, "Here we are, Trails End at the Bar None Ranch." And Buddy looks very annoyed. He does not want to be there at all. We find out officially later on that he's from New York, but I think the early tip is his son's wearing a Mets hat. I think that was to
He's
let
such a
you know
90s
right away.
kid, though. I can't
Yeah.
even skateboard here, Dad.
I love
Yeah.
it. He was my favorite character as a kid. And now I think as an adult, as I watch it, where he's like, I can't even skateboard. I want to rent a bloody movie. I was like, oh, right. Yeah, that all tracks now. That's exactly how I am still.
Yeah,
And
his
Mr.
dad,
Ernst comes in, David Brisbane, who, again, we've seen all the time. Does anybody feel like he looks like if Rick Moranis fucked the Micro Machines guy?
100% a Rick Moranis vibe.
Yeah,
yes.
it's definitely a Rick Moranis type. That's probably how he got most of his like gigs at that time.
When I saw him, that was my immediate thought. And then I was like, the Micro Machines guy? Like, why was that buried in my subconscious somewhere?
I'm trying to rack my brain as to what the Micro Machines guy is.
They did a ton of commercials.
He
Remember
talked
Micro Machines?
super
They
fast.
were the tiny little cars.
That's what he was best known for, the super fast talking guy.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go look that up. But I remember Micro Machine. Was that like the boy answer to Polly Pocket?
No, that's
No,
Mighty
that was
Max.
Mighty Max.
Oh, okay.
Micro Machines, little cars.
Yeah, they're just like Hot Wheels or whatever.
They're like tiny Hot Wheels, but they work really well if Daniel Stern steps on them. They slide all across the floor.
That's a Home Alone reference.
It's the sound of a reference going into the Hey Dude episode.
And Mr. Ernst too. I mean, we said it before. He's an accountant from New York, and he looks like an accountant from New York who's trying to dress like he's being a cowboy.
He looks like when Pee Wee Herman steps out of the trailer in the end of Pee Wee's Big Adventure dressed
I
as a
swear to
cowboy.
God, I was going to make the same reference. It's the hat, too.
The giant hat. I don't know what that type of cowboy hat is called, but you don't see them very often, and I think
They're like
there's
more
prob-
rounded ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but a
think it's
huge
a 10-gallon hat, isn't it?
No, I think a 10-gallon hat is still like a Stetson style hat, like the kind you guys are wearing. I don't know what you call that one.
We call that a city slicker hat.
It's definitely a city slicker hat. That's definitely like they saw you coming. That's the salesman was like, it's the most expensive one and the most real cowboy.
Also, Joe, I felt like that was a shirt that I could see you wearing.
Oh, yeah, that's totally got Joe written all over.
Oh,
it.
yeah. Oh, if I could find that shirt in my size, I'd be wearing it right now. I love those shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nudie suits.
Yeah.
That's what they're called. I don't know
I
what's
know,
funny
it's
about
so funny.
And
Beauty, R.I.P.
this is also Mr. Ernst wondering. He's asking Buddy like, "What should we do for our first night? Watch the western sunset or have some real western chow?" Like he's not like he's just so into the fantasy of being out here that he doesn't even have any specifics in mind. He's just trying to. I don't know. He's a tourist. He's a tourist, but he owns the place.
What the hell is he going to eat? What's real authentic cowboy food? He's going to make like like
Beans.
hardtack.
Hide some beans by the fire.
I think to him though is I think Ferg's right. It's probably just like beans around the fire. You know what I mean? Like that's what he thinks cowboys eat.
Which was the salsa that
New York City.
Was that old El Paso?
El Paso.
I think so, yeah.
They just spooning tortillas with old El Paso. We've done it.
This stuff's made in New York City.
New York City.
I get the
Thank you.
gimmick for
Someone
that,
did
by
it.
the way, but like, would you give a shit where your salsa was made? It's like, do they use the ingredients the same? Like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, I feel like the only thing I care about where it's made is bourbon. That's probably the only thing in the world where I'm like, well, it's just not going to be as good otherwise. But aside from that, if someone's like, these Starburst were made in Puerto Rico, you'd be like, well, I don't want them.
But even with bourbon, it's only because those places have existed forever. Like if a new distillery opened up in Bourbon, in like Tennessee or whatever, like you wouldn't care.
Oh, no.
Oh,
But I'm
Kentucky
saying,
is
like,
bourbon, whiskey's Tennessee, right?
every time I try to get any whiskeys from around like here or anything where it's like, it's Old Man of the Mountain whiskey or whatever, it's always like, this isn't very good. I just don't think, I think that you need people who've been doing it for a long time.
For sure. I mean, we actually talked about distilleries very recently in MASH last week.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's more of a process. So, the victor goes to the person who has the most amount of time to do it.
And again, not easy, because one time we bought one of those barrels that was like, make your own whiskey kit, and you like pour the whiskey in and you age it and blah, blah, blah. We waited 2 years and I took half a shot of it and didn't take it as a shot, like went to keep it in my mouth to taste it. I burned every hair off of my tongue. It was the 4th of July at my parents' house.
You have a hairy tongue?
You have a hairy tongue?
Like, the flavor,
He
like,
used
I
to.
couldn't, yeah, not anymore. Yeah, I was literally
burn
in the
your
pool
taste
going like
buds.
this, like, to my tongue, because I've never felt so much pain. Chlorine did not help. But yeah, so whiskey is not an easy thing to do.
Especially when you're just using like the Amazon barrel kit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, we obviously weren't like, I mean, I wish I made a still or something, but
I don't
didn't
understand
know
what
that was
happened.
a thing, to be honest with you. I know they have the microbreweries. I didn't know they had like a at-home whiskey kit.
Well, you don't really make whiskey in it. You kind of infuse existing
Yeah.
whiskey with it.
they basically give
basically-
you rubbing alcohol and you pour it into wood for 2 years, and they're like, it'll taste like whiskey.
Just throw
Spoiler
this-
alert, it does not.
Throw this vanilla bean in and watch what happens. But yeah, and then after that whole scene, we cut to the girls' bunk, and right off the bat, it's considerably nicer than the boys' one. I don't know if you guys picked up on that right away. And
There
I
was
don't
no
mean
bunk beds.
it wasn't because of like how they dressed it up either. It's just they gave him a nicer facility to stay in.
Well, they didn't have bunk beds.
Well, think about it. Like the women's bathroom always has a fucking couch in it. I was just got shit in the corner. So
They've always got nicer candles in there.
Maybe if you stop shitting in the corner, they'll put a couch there. But
I'll stop shitting when I get my couch.
We're at an impasse here. One thing
Yeah.
I noticed too that's surprising to me, and we've all seen a billion of these like teen camp type movies, right? Is that it's always like the boys' bunks are here and the girls' bunks are a quarter mile down the road because we don't want hormone fueled teenagers to be too close to each other. In this one, it was like all you have to do is walk 2 paces from the girls to the guys. I'm like, that seems like inviting some trouble.
Just make sure you go. Are you decent?
Yeah,
yeah,
as
you just have to
walk in,
cover your
stare at
eyes.
them.
And then as soon as you walk in, they're going to dry hump you.
You'll be sandwiched.
And
Probably because it's so sandy there.
yeah, so this is the first scene where Melody meets Brad, and she tries to point her in the direction of where the guests stay because she doesn't understand that Brad works there. And Brad mentions that this isn't like, the first time that someone's mistaken her for a guest. Melody apologizes and said it's, from, by the looks of her clothes. And she's kind of like, my clothes? She's like, no, they're beautiful. It's just, they're not very ranchy. Because she's dressed, I don't know, how would you describe it?
She
kinda has,
got,
like-
grandma clothes.
I know
don't
for someone her age, she's in like a business casual type situation.
I thought that she was saying that because you can see that she's got like really sweaty underarms. You guys didn't see Brad's pits?
I thought she should have said, you just look like you're dressed too nice to work here. Like, you look-
Essentially, that is what she's saying. Brad tells her she has a lot of clothes with her. So, and then they start to like unpack her stuff together. Melody, while they're making small talk, asks her like, who else confused you, for a guest? And this is when she brings up Ted, who she describes as this totally conceited, offensive guy who'd be kind of cute if he wasn't so obnoxious you'd want to puke.
Exactly what my wife said about me.
I was gonna say, I feel like we all can fall into that category, right?
Or at least now we find out they both think Ted's cute. Or at least kind of cute.
I feel like that's everybody at that age, though. Like, that's a boy at that age, no matter what. And I feel like most people at this age, it's pretty much all the same except for conceited, because you're old enough to be like, I am a nightmare. You're not like, I'm hot and cool. You're like, I scream in the shower about things I did when I was 15 that I probably did wrong or whatever.
Joe, are you saying that all 15-year-old boys are cute?
Well.
All right, Max.
I feel like a sandwich all of a sudden.
Joe's
S1E1
Magic
does not
Shop.
condone this.
You guys, I just I'm opening a new cafe down the street.
It's called Cup of Joe's.
But yeah, so Melody instantly realizes she's talking about Ted by the description and tells him to, try to focus on his good points, which she's like, which are what? And she's like, you're right.
Huge
It's just stop it. They're kids.
I'm glad you went there.
She's like, you're right. It's easy to just hate him. So then Melody compliments Brad on her clothes, and she's like, oh, well, we're probably the same size. You can always borrow whatever you want. And Melody's like, oh, thanks. And, same goes for you. And she kind of holds up like a pair of jeans.
It's not like offensive clothing.
Yeah. And Brad's like, oh, thanks. I probably won't need to. And
So
I
she
was
didn't
like,
pull up like a glittered t-shirt that said who farted. You know what I mean? She just pulls up like normal ass clothes.
I want that.
I know you do.
Gordo, Christmas isn't that far away. Don't worry.
yeah, I'm sure Etsy has some available. I thought, as far as it went for Brad, though, I thought that was kind of dickish of her, right? Like, couldn't you just enter and be like, oh,
yeah.
thank you?
Totally
Yeah.
dickish of her.
Don't look at the clothes and be like, because isn't the whole thing that the perception isn't reality with her character? Like, you see her look a certain way, but
I think
there's
she's
more
supposed
to her.
to come off as snobby, but she's such a bad actress that it doesn't translate.
See, but I thought it was the opposite. I thought you're supposed to think she's snobby, but as you find out about her, there's more to her because they're just going by the limo and the clothes. So I thought this was a little out of place because she was acting a little snobby with that line.
Also, like, it's a dude ranch, and you're gonna want to wear jeans and t-shirts. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be. You find out that she's a horse lady, as Gordo would say, and you know what I mean? Like, it seems insane that she's like, no, I wouldn't wear your normal ass clothes. It's just still weird, like you said. They're just regular clothes. She's not holding anything.
She's
in
a
her.
horse lady. Why the long face, Brad?
Question. Why did they call it a dude ranch? Does anybody
dude?
know?
Like the history of a dude ranch, why it's called that, I have no idea.
We probably should have looked that up since the title of the show is Hey Dude, huh?
They refer to the type of patrons they attracted, which I guess were dudes.
Oh.
I mean, I know dude
Okay.
is a country, like an Old West term.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ranches that opened up to the tourism business were called guest ranches or dude ranches. There's no good reason. I guess
A
is the
cattle
short
ranch
answer.
converted to a vacation resort for tourists is the definition. I thought it might say it in that, but it does not.
Which makes sense because in Back to the Future 3, Biff Tannen calls Marty McFly dude. So it would have been an insult for him. Like, you're not a real cowboy. You're
Right.
a tourist cowboy.
But at the end of the day, like, I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude. We're all dudes.
We're all dudes.
Hey,
So from there, we cut to Mr. Ernst, who's talking to himself outside. And he doesn't know where his own office is, and he's, embarrassed about that. And Melody walks by and stops to introduce herself to him. And she informs him that she's the swimming teacher there and the lifeguard. So that's the first time we find out what her job is at the Dude Ranch. And then they kind of go over the layout of the ranch together. And, she's kind of saying, yeah, that's our bunk. That's where the boys bunk. That's like the dining hall. He's like, yeah. And then he's like trying to bring up his office because he's trying to figure out where it is, but he's embarrassed to ask her. And that's kind of the joke in the conversation. And she's like, oh yeah, your office is great. It's the only place in the whole ranch with AC. The old owner put a couch in there. But I just didn't understand why can't you just ask her where, hey, I'm obviously new here. This is my first day. Do you know where my office is? I don't think
they
so.
would have this joke. And
That's
he has
true,
to have
but-
the illusion of being in charge as the new boss.
Right.
I also don't get the impression that this is like a humongous property. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be that hard to find all of
I
the
was thinking
dwellings.
the same thing, yeah. There's
It's
probably
pretty big because
three
there's
buildings
apparently
right
a
near
pool
each
and we
other.
never see it. So-
Yeah, I guess that's true. There is a pool. I mean, like, and you don't see any of the, you don't see any of the, like, guest places. You just see literally only staff.
So the thing about his office too, I know it's featured prominently in the rest of the show. So I
Yeah.
wonder if like it's just not like they didn't have the set built yet, or it was an actual dude ranch being used, like you said. Maybe they had to wait a little while for that
it's
area
tough.
to clear out. But
I mean, because we do pilot episodes, and it's very interesting from show to show. Some shows, the pilots are legit filmed as one-offs to sell a show to a company. So
yeah,
at this point, they might have had very limited sets and resources and didn't create that stuff yet. And then like you see a lot now when we tackle newer shows like those Netflix ones where they film the whole season at once, you know, they're much more established right from the pilot because the show is already ordered to a season.
That makes sense.
I was gonna say, this also just gives them, like Ferg said earlier too, like the excuse to just give this guy, this is his gag the whole thing, right? So you need to know he's like a bumbling sort of not real cowboy, a dude.
Yeah, it's just to, you know, show him as kind of doofy. You now cut to Ted, Danny, and Buddy all together, and it looks like the two guys gave Buddy like a tour of the ranch for the first time. And they said tomorrow, you know, they're going to take him out riding, which he has no interest in doing. He said he's not the horse type. And it seems like this whole taking him for a walk was just to get information about his dad, which was also unnecessary. They probably could have just asked him. It's not like, hey, we'll give you a tour if you tell us about your dad. He's like, sure.
Again, of this sprawling, expansive ranch.
But he tells him he doesn't spend a lot of time with his dad because his parents aren't together and he lives with his mom. But says his father tries, and he kind of gets crazy ideas sometimes. Like, no, he's an accountant from New York, and he bought a ranch in Arizona. And that's kind of when we first get the real feel for officially know that he's a New Yorker, what his background is, and then where this ranch is located.
Yeah, this is just like a very much an exposition dump. This is just like move the story along, gives people some background, so we know the backstory on Ernst and Buddy.
And Danny wants to know if he's ever been around any animals, talking about Buddy's father. And he said, well, his apartment has cockroaches.
Apparently not a very successful accountant if he's living in a cockroach-infested apartment in New York.
Well, I mean, that
that's
could
just
be
all of New York.
Apartment.
New York. Yeah.
Sorry,
I
New
guess
York listeners.
Don't most apartments have some kind of, like in that New York thing,
I mean, it's like
like trope?
in like bad apartments, you know what I mean? Like, there's also billion-dollar apartments in New York.
Yeah, look at Joe's apartment. Not our Joe, the show/movie, Joe's apartment.
My apartment did not cost $1 billion.
I wasn't talking about you.
Also an MTV production. This show was Hey Dude was an MTV production.
It was?
Is it really?
Yeah, if you look at the end credits, it's credited as an MTV production.
Strange.
Huh.
It was written by Kurt Loder.
R.I.P.
I think he's still alive.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kurt Loder is alive.
Kurt, if you're still alive and listening, call in.
It's sad that he wouldn't be able to do his own break-in news break to tell you if he died. That's kind of depressing. I hope he pre-recorded it. They'll break in from whatever, like, you know, Rob Dyrdek on a Kardashian show that MTV plays now or whatever.
The one
MTV2
that
is
was like
just
noticeably
ridiculousness.
older than everybody else on the show, right? I mean, on the network, right? Like everyone else was like teenagers in their early 20s. He was like 40. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they hired him because he was like a respected journalist and he was like a Rolling Stone guy. And they were like, well, we should have one person who's like not named like, this is Kennedy and I'm here on Bump and Grind or whatever, like all the fucking shit they would do.
Funny,
Moving back-
she's on Fox Business right now.
Kennedy is?
Yep.
Good for Kennedy.
So to go back to this episode,
Oh, you don't want to talk about more 1980s MTV?
I mean, we can off air at some point. So as all that was happening, Brad walks by, and she's kind of like in this equestrian type outfit, I would say, like half in, half out. Like the pants and boots kind of line up with it, but the shirt isn't. She's like halfway into the Dude Ranch attire now, but like not really.
It was like rich people's riding clothes.
She
Yeah,
doesn't have the fun helmet on, though.
Yeah.
right. That's why I'm
Equestrian
like,
helmet.
it's like kind of half.
Yeah.
Like from like the waist down, she had like the full equestrian gear.
Because
And
those
then-
helmets are for like rich people and professionals, right? Because like if you're like a horse jockey, you don't wear one. And if you're like a tourist, you wear like a skateboard helmet. You know what I mean? Like they put you in like a Pro Tech or something that you don't. So if you fall off.
No, that
And
makes sense.
You know why she didn't wear the helmet? Because that would expose that she has experience with horses, and then the whole thing with Ted couldn't have happened.
Oh, good call.
It would have exposed that she's a horse girl.
Well, she's also just walking around. She didn't have any intentions of getting on a horse at that moment. You don't just walk around with a helmet on at all times.
Yes, you do. I see firefighters walking around with helmets on, construction workers just in the store.
So Ted points her out to Danny when she walks by and says that he's gonna go approach her. So, watch the master, which it's weird because I think this happened again last week with the MASH episode where Hawkeye calls himself the master, and it just always sounds so weird to me, but it's a common term in a lot of shows, but to refer to yourself as the master always just feels strange.
There's only one master, and that's show enough.
It's also weird, too, because Ted went up to the horse when he was trying to break it and was like, be good or I'll have to cut around your B cups. And everyone was like, yeah, that's just a weird thing to say to this horse.
Again, that's from the MASH episode that we did last week, not about this show starring a bunch of children.
It's a good thing that's the line that Joe chose and not one of the other lines from MASH.
Ooh.
So, moving right along, when he walks up to her, she says, well, if it isn't the senior staph infection, which I thought was a great burn.
Yeah,
good line. That's a good line. I wrote that one down too.
That's a good line, which would never be in a children's show today.
Correct. But that's, no, they are. You just don't
90s!
get it. You go back to like when we were kids, like we didn't get that line when we were kids. You just know that she's making fun of him, so you laugh along, as kids will do. They just know they're supposed to laugh there. And he starts talking to her to see if she wants to see a real cowboy ride. And she tells him she doesn't see one anywhere, and they're having a little bit of a back and forth, and Danny walks up during this and kind of whispers in her ear, don't judge him until you get to know him. I don't know, like, it was almost like he knew they were kind of courting one another, and he was saying give him a chance.
Fuck that. Like, if you find him obnoxious, just tell him he's fucking obnoxious. You get all these people being like, oh, good golly, you should give him a chance. Like, no.
Well, they have to spend all summer together. They're trying to make sure everyone gets along.
Yeah. And they're all
I think
friendly,
it's less sexual at that point and more, or like less romantic, rather. I don't want to say sexual, they're kids, but less romantic at that point because it's more just like, there's 5 of us for the next 90 days. Let's all try to keep it civil here and be friendly.
I wonder if there is a much bigger staff and like they're just always off camera.
Yeah, we don't really get to see them.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense that there's just an absentee owner who's kind of bumbling and then like one woman who's in charge of everybody after that. Like you'd think there would be more of a structure there.
It's like Salute Your Shorts, Ugg wasn't in charge of like 30 children. There had to have been other counselors that you never saw.
Right.
So he points out this horse that he's going to ride. And she basically tells him like a real cowboy would get on that one over there, which is Rocket, which I assume was the horse from earlier. Could be a different wild horse, but I think it was the same one from before. So
real bitch move to kill him.
She's calling him out on his bullshit because he's talking himself up so much.
You don't need to call him out on his bullshit by trying to kill him.
Well,
I can't ride this horse. What am I, Superman?
But I think the idea is more that he's going to back down when she says that.
If you guys had a horse, what would you name it? Not
Cigar!
In honor of our WKRP episode, Howard Horseman.
I'd probably name it Moxie, named after the best soda in the world.
You would name it Cigar's Uniform?
No.
Gordo, your horse name?
I didn't think of it.
What? I thought you asked.
I thought you asked that so you could make some poop joke.
Actually, I have a horse in Red Dead Redemption, the video game, and I named it Ricochet.
That's a good horse name, especially a cowboy horse.
Do you have to name it in the video game, or is that just what
you have to?
think?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
At the time, I was a really big fan of the Ricochet wrestler. So that's
Nick,
why
stop talking about wrestling.
Yeah, Nick.
My bad.
But so he decides he's gonna get on Rocket, and so he jumps over the fence or whatever to get
Corral
to him.
fence.
And Danny kind of revisits that line that he said earlier, only now he adds, once you get to know him, you realize that he's a real jerk. And then he's trying to stop him. And before he can even get on the horse, it just starts jumping around like crazy, and Ted falls to the ground. And it looks like he's about to get trampled on, and then Danny kind of hops in and pulls him out to safety. And then meanwhile, while that's happening, Brad does run in and starts to like try to calm the horse down. So I guess this is the first inkling that she has like something going on with horses.
Her way of calming it is just like, yeah.
Yeah.
I like how Ted's reaction is to kick the horse. Like laying on the ground like that was going to do something to a 2,000-pound
Yeah, the horse that weighs as much as a Buick. He's like, maybe if I just kick it.
My Nikes will stop this.
I thought
I think those were just reflexes. He was shielding himself.
a lot of these scenes, I know obviously they cut away when he's on the ground, there's no horse right over him. But a lot of the scenes where they're interacting with the horse, it looks like they're all interacting with this actual horse.
Funny thing about this show, the horse was actually also the cameraman.
I'm in the union.
Ooh. I thought I did think that was really interesting though, because the horse was like bucking and jumping around a lot. So in modern day, I feel like they would never let that happen, especially with a bunch of child actors.
So you can kind of see in the way that this is cut,
Yeah.
the horse is bucking and bronking in one area, but like the kids are over here. You can't obviously see my hands in the way that I'm doing this, but
I can,
the
and I
kids
don't
are
know what you're
not in
talking
the-
about. So.
The kids are, listen, the kids are not in the shot. So it's shot spliced because clearly this isn't a real wild horse and they're making the horse jump up in the air. So they're just showing the horse going, "Ray," and then they're cutting to the kids going like this. So I feel like they're not really in the same vicinity as the horse.
They're
Well,
two
trick
different
editing,
recordings
yeah.
put together. Like, if you notice Ted, whenever he's with the horse, he's just with the horse's ass. And then when it's...
Don't
when
talk
it's-
about Danny that way.
you. But then when it's bucking, it's just the horse alone bucking. And then when Ted's on its back, there's nothing else in the scene other than his hands in the air. And then it cuts to
The horse bucking.
hooves.
Well, to use the famous S1E1 catchphrase, not to get ahead, there is a scene later where you see Danny holding the rope with the horse, and it is Danny holding the horse while the horse is jumping. So whether it's tamed or not, I was like, wow, I mean, there's risk there, right, with these shots. And I'm sure it's a trained, horse that was used for television and stuff like that, but I don't know, I didn't expect that.
It would have been funnier if they got one of those dressage horses that does the dancing. Like, instead of having it be all wild, he tames them and he just like...
Bows down.
I don't care how much I love Westerns and want to be a cowboy. If I could go back in time and be a dressage cowboy, oh my god, that'd be the coolest thing ever. You'd be shot immediately. Your horse would be stolen.
So once he gets back out into safety, Danny yells at him and tells him that he could have been killed. And Ted thanks him and says, if it wasn't for him and that girl, something could have happened to him. And he's like, something's weird about her. But then he goes on to say, next time he's going to ride that horse. And as he walks away, Danny kind of trips him.
He just flat out trips him.
At that point, Mr. Ernst shows up and introduces himself to the two boys for the first time. And he starts asking why Ted's clothes are so dirty and says it looks like he's been rolling around in the ground. I mean, I understand that they kind of had like a runner joke here, but is it that weird for all these kids who work at a dude ranch to be dirty? Like, they're
I was
dealing with,
gonna
like,
say,
There was no
Yeah,
need
it's
for
a
the
weird
thing to
elaborate
harp
lie.
on.
He's like, wait a minute.
Jay, you mentioned that one of the very first scenes, it's crazy windy there.
Yeah.
You're crazy windy in the desert. You're probably going to be covered in dust all the fucking time.
Yeah, it's not weird that he's dirty at all.
No.
But they go into this like kind of cover up lie where they tell him that he's breaking in his clothes, and that's kind of like how they go about it. You have to pack it in dirt or whatever to start off.
I don't know why they don't just say, "Oh, I was just doing my chores."
Yeah.
My job.
A million things they could have said
Right.
that would have made way more sense.
I like it first when he's like, they're not dirty. It's like you're saying that to someone looking at you. That can't be your argument. he's physically right in front of you. You can't say they're not.
Deny, deny, deny.
This is the first time I noticed, too, that Mr. Ernst also has a pocket protector in his Western shirt.
Oh, I never picked up on that the whole
Also,
time.
maybe in another life he was Louis Skolnick.
And then at this point, they kind of revisit another joke about how he doesn't know where his office is. And he's like, oh, so this is the duty roster that I have. And, it's going to tell you guys what your, assignments are each day. And they're going to be hanging right in my office. You guys know where that is, right? I'm like, yep. So again, the conversation does not steer the way he thinks it is. Only this time he finally has to just bite the bullet. And he's like, where is that?
I respect his plan. It should have worked.
But at least at this point, he's like, okay, I give. Where is it?
And they, and once again, they just tell him where it is. It's not really a big deal. And as they start walking, Ernst says, like, ow, because his boots were really hurting his feet. And Danny tells him, like, you should break these in gradually. but it's very important to Mr. Ernst that he looks authentic to the guests.
I mean,
I
that
get it, man.
makes
Breaking in
sense.
boots is awful.
Yeah, cowboy boots are notoriously hard to break in, from my understanding. I don't own them.
The only boots I ever own are steel toe for work, and those are just painful all the time, usually.
I mean, I try my
And-
best, even in the winter, to wear sneakers as long as I can, any day I can.
Also, this scene closes out with a really weird. They walk off camera, and like the last person you see is Danny, who just makes this weird face, and he just like runs up and does something to Ted off camera because you just hear him yell, "Danny!" Like, what did he do to him?
I was gonna ask the same thing.
You don't want to
So
know.
it was like there was another scene that they fucking just cut out.
It involved a finger.
Okay,
What? Your mind's going somewhere dirty.
no, not at the time. He could have ran up and tickled him or something, for all I know.
Wet Willie.
Possibly.
It's just strange that they left the Danny in there. Like, if they were gonna cut whatever he did, why not cut the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
a weird choice. Weird editing choice.
Maybe he
Yeah.
tripped him again.
And from that scene, we get to Buddy, who's with Cassie, the dog we mentioned earlier, and he's trying to train her to yawn. I'm assuming it's her. I don't know. We assuming Cassie's a girl dog?
Was.
I assume
Stop.
so.
Yeah, we know, dude.
Yeah, I
So-
think Cassie's a girl
Yeah.
dog.
So he's trying to train her to yawn whenever he asks if she's having fun. This way, his dad will see that they're bored there. And that's when Melody walks up and drops popcorn into his mouth as he's emulating the yawn for the dog to do.
Would have been better if he started joking for the music.
I'm allergic to corn!
And it was she's like holding like that most generic popcorn bag, and I'm like, why would she be casually eating like novelty popcorn unless they sell that to maybe the guests? Maybe they have a concession area.
I'm sure that there's like a snack bar.
Maybe they have popcorn for the guests just like in the main lodge.
Right.
Which I
Yeah,
said I've
thought
gone
that-
back and they a lot of the show is in that lodge. I don't remember if there's a popcorn
Yeah.
machine or not though.
But that was the only like logical reason she could have that kind of generic popcorn. Melody starts talking to Buddy and asking him, if he's bored, and he's like, no. And she's like, well, that's weird because like I get bored sometimes. And then she starts telling him about like all these things that she likes to do to kind of connect with him in a way, talking about how, while she's there, she doesn't get to use her secret language, and she doesn't get to have eating contests. And he's like, I love to have eating contests, and I have a secret language with my friends.
I don't get this at all.
She's
Like,
just
This
trying
was
to-
where
we
I
like
did
to
not-
break
yeah,
things and put them back together.
yeah.
That was like everyone. He's like, we used to break stuff and then fix it. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What the hell?
It was like a weird scene where she's trying to connect to him. So like, I think as far as, I don't know, I guess she was doing a good job connecting to Buddy, but like the thought process, like the reverse psychology thing she's trying to do with him, like was not sound logic.
Now, what do we think an eating contest entails?
A contest of eating.
Who can eat the most or the fastest, depending one way.
Yeah,
or
that's what I
the
mean.
other.
Who can
Like,
eat,
what are
who
the
can eat the
parameters
hottest
here?
wings?
Yeah, is it a heat thing? Is it a volume thing? Is it a speed thing?
Heat
My
thing
guess,
wasn't
is,
going on
my
back
guess
then.
is volume and speed.
Volume and speed.
Yeah.
There was no like heat things back then. Like nothing was like Tabasco sauce existed, and that's about the extent of spicy food.
It didn't exist
most
back
people.
then, maybe because Buddy didn't invent it yet. And this is just the start of it.
Is that the secret origins of hot sauce?
New York City.
No, I mean, I imagine it's like pies. Like who can eat like the pie the fastest,
Yeah.
or watermelon, or you
But
know.
I think she's like trying to say like, hey, if you stick around, like we can do these types of things. I think it's also important to notice that.
where the
to
hell is he
note-
gonna go?
Well, he's stuck there because like his dad owns the place. And,
Yeah, I don't think it's that he's gonna leave. I think it's just to like have more of an open mind and try to
yeah,
enjoy
like don't
it,
worry, like
'cause-
it's not gonna be so bad because like I like doing all these things. Buddy is younger than the rest of the kids, so I think we didn't really note that before. He's probably a good solid like 4 years younger than the rest of them, maybe.
Yeah, he's definitely like if those kids are 16, he's like 12.
And the conversation gets cut off when Ted shows up asking her to hold like one end of the rope he has. And she's like, okay, like what's going to be on the other side? And he's like, rocket. So she yells at him, reminding him that he almost got killed earlier, which I guess word travels fast because she was not there for that.
Well, there is only 6 of them.
That's true. And he tells her that he's going to do it whether she holds the rope or not. She like kind of like reluctantly agrees to help him at some point. But during that, they do this little thing where her and Buddy are like holding onto the rope while he's holding it. but I guess he must have been pulling hard because they let go of the rope and he falls into the trough again.
They really love this falling to the trough gag.
Yes. But I didn't see
it's like equal to like F Troop with the tower falling.
Yeah.
But it didn't make sense because was this like they weren't in the midst of a tug of war or anything. So if he was holding the rope too, he wasn't like pulling at them.
Yeah, if they were holding the rope, you'd assume one end of the rope is tied to the horse?
Not yet, though.
Okay, so he's walking the rope to the horse.
It's a spontaneous friendship tug of war. You guys don't remember we used to do that?
Yeah. It was just...
I'm confused by the physics of this now.
Well, no, because if you look at the way that he had the rope, it kind of looked like it was a lasso, like he was going to cowboy it up.
Oh, if he's going to lasso Rocket?
Yeah.
Yeehaw!
Yeah, yeehaw. Real cowboy.
He needs to learn that he's not a wrangler, he's more of a bugle boy.
Ah. So Danny walks up to Ted now, who's in the trough for the second time this episode, and tells him that he usually prefers to swim in the pools because he finds it too hard to turn in the trough. So again,
I feel like he's getting a little less wooden as this goes on.
I mean, they're feeding him jokes and lines and stuff, but
he's better in every scene that's not in that little cabin at the beginning.
That was really rough. Yeah, that was like definitely, they probably filmed it sequentially and like it was the first time he's ever acted in his life.
I know he gets better, although I haven't watched the rest of the show recently, and he was my favorite back then, so it might just be remembering it.
Yeah.
Like that, but
and
he does.
From that joke, Ted kind of gives him some fake laughter, and he's trying to butter him up because he wants Danny to help him as well with this rocket situation. He's pretty much dead set against it, but he kind of gives him like the guilt. Well, he tells him that Melody's going to help, and he's saying, well, she's helping me because she probably doesn't want to see me get hurt. Do you want to see me get hurt? So then he's, kind of begrudgingly agrees because he knows like deep down that Ted probably is going to do it whether or not he helps. So he might as well at least be there to make sure nothing goes wrong.
Like Ted's playing 5D chess right there.
We have another time now where Mr. Ernst walks up to them and he thanks the boys for helping him find his office earlier. And he notices how wet Ted is. So they tell him that
Glad Joe wasn't here for that line.
And they tell him that this is also part of the breaking in the clothes process. And while he's doing it, like Danny, I think just to kind of rib on Ted, just keeps tossing water on him as he's explaining it. He did the same thing with the dirt earlier, where he's always like, "That's enough."
I think that's what he did to him off camera. He threw more dirt on him.
I think this show does a good job of not like they let jokes run throughout the episode. So like the breaking in the clothes thing was like an ongoing thing. The him not knowing his office came up multiple times. So they do kind of like have continuity as things move along.
It's decent writing.
Yeah, that's nice to see it.
For like a kids show, like a simple kids show. Yeah, like they put a little thought into the structure here.
No, it makes sense.
And then also Mr. Ernst wants to know about the rope. And again, whenever he asks about anything now, it's just about the clothes process. So this is also part of breaking in clothes. After they're wet, you lay them out, they dry, and then you beat them with a rope.
Yeah,
why did he say you used the rope to hang them?
Yeah,
I know.
To beat them with the rope.
Yeah. It's like you make it like a clothesline, It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
and
that would have been made the most sense, but
Oh, we are cowboys. We need a rope.
Mr. Ernst tells him like this whole thing sounds like a very arduous process, and then asks if he can hire Ted to break in his clothes for him. So like he kind of gives him like a quick agreement as they run off.
Did anybody else feel like arduous was a weirdly big word for this show?
It's New York City talk.
For him to say,
I guess I'm trying to say that he's like, it's not that arduous is a big word, but it feels like a weird word for a kid show. Like it seemed out of place to me enough that I wrote it down.
Yeah, well, it's one of those again. It's like the joke we were saying earlier. The kids won't get it, but they understand where his character is. So you can put two and two together sometimes with that stuff. And that scene kind of ends with him all alone, and his feet hurt. Again, we talk about runners, like his feet hurt from these boots. So he kind of just picks him up and like he has like one sitting on the trough real quick. And as he's doing that, his hat falls. And when he turns to get his hat, his foot falls in the trough. And you get the little quick physical gag there where his foot's in the water.
A lot of water jokes in this. For a desert, they really like making water gags.
well,
What's a water gag?
It's what Brett. No, I'm not going to get myself in trouble.
So from there we go to everyone, well, all the kids at least, with the horse. And this is, like I said before, Danny's inside as the horse is like kind of running and jumping around. And we get from there, we cut to Brad with Ted, and they're talking. And Brad's apologizing to him about, I shouldn't be egging you on for this. Like, I'm sorry. And Ted's like, no, it's guests like you who think that it's, it's all a show. And now I have to prove that this is like real. And she's trying to tell him that she's not a guest and that she works there, but he runs off before she has the opportunity to do that. But I was thinking about that, and I don't know if finding out that she worked there would dull the situation down. I think if anything, it would make it worse because then he'd be more competitive with her.
Yeah, like if she's a guest, she's going to leave eventually and he'll never see her again. She's not staying there the whole summer.
Then why even bother going through the process of breaking in a horse?
Well, the horse has to be broken in for other guests to ride.
Yeah, it's not like her personal horse.
That horse lives on the ranch. Guests only come and stay. They come and go as they please.
But to be so adamant about wanting to break in this horse to impress this girl, do you think, am I misreading this, that like now this kid is determined just to ride the horse?
Yeah,
or is
that's
he still trying to impress her?
I think it's a little bit of both because
yeah.
he thinks he's a real cowboy guy too.
Yeah,
He
obviously
wants
thinks,
her to see him as a cowboy because, all girls that going on vacation want to bang a cowboy.
Well, no, he just thinks very highly of himself too. But yeah, it's have to impress her, have to prove to himself that he can do it because he's just very stubborn. Because even before that, when he first laid eyes on that horse, if you remember the scene with Lucy, Lucy's like, I know what you're thinking. Don't even think about it. So obviously he would want to ride that horse regardless of the situation with Brad. But the fact that she's egging him on and he feels like he needs to impress her all the more intensifies the reason why he's going to go out of his way to do it.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. I was just kind of confused at this point about his motivation.
But also I want to say, he's under the impression that Brad is a guest. Why is he this comfortable with her and like yelling at her and stuff? She's like, in your mind, she's a guest staying at the Dude Ranch and you're like yelling at her like, oh, you think you're this and that? Like, I'll prove to you. You don't get to talk to the guests that way.
You go to a hotel that happens and you're like, I was just trying to find the ice machine, man. What's going on over here?
You stupid bitch.
It's like, that's not senior staff material.
It was like,
It's
yeah,
not
right
senior
around
staff.
that point is when I was like, wait a minute. If he doesn't know she's a coworker, why is he talking to her this way?
That's
You can't do
a
that.
good call. That never occurred
Yeah, I
to
didn't
me
think of that either. That's a very
Why
good
is he
pull.
talking to a
I don't
guest
think
that
the
way?
writers thought of it either.
Yes, I did.
I was going to say, give the horse a break, Nick.
So Ted does finally get on this horse, and after, I don't know, maybe 2 seconds of the horse jumping up and down, he falls.
This is where he falls into that pit of quicksand, drowns, and dies, and he's not seen for the rest of the episode.
Well, I thought this was a little weird too. He falls into this giant like puddle of mud, not to be confused with the rock band. I think Ferg's favorite band actually, Puddle of Mud.
No. Now, is that supposed to be horse shit?
You're thinking
I
of
I
Mud
was
I-
thinking
Jojo.
the same thing.
I thought it was supposed to be
Pee-pee.
mud and not crap.
I
but,
thought it was supposed to be pee-pee. Like horses piss, like you ever hear, I gotta piss like a racehorse?
Yes, I understand that horses go to the bathroom, but I don't think that's what the intent was here. But regardless if it was caca or mud,
Or pee-pee.
I've been to enough.
Shit, because
I've
why
been
would
to
there be a
enough-
giant like hole full of water and mud and the horse? If the
Well-
horse stepped in that, he'd fall and we'd have,
the horse breaks
we'd
his
have a
leg, and then
never-ending
again,
story
it's off to the glue
situation. with The
factory.
horse.
well, what I thought was weird here was he falls in it, and now everyone just starts laughing. Which I get the gag that he's in the mud, but isn't there
It's
still
pee-pee.
a wild horse that could kill him inside?
They could
of
still
this?
stomp him to death.
Yeah, like
It's stopping them like really bad, and they're all just.
yeah, it's
Bite
like
him
this
with
is
those big
scribbling.
teeth.
It's the same horse that they thought was going to kill him earlier, and now he's still stuck in the mud now while this horse is jumping around, like, and then like they walk up to Brad walks up to him again. This horse is still in there. No one ever took the horse out.
To be fair, at this point in knowing Ted, had I just met him, I'd let him die in that mud pit. So I
Touche.
feel like this kid's so fucking annoying. We could probably get away with this as just like an accident.
No, he's a good guy. Just gotta give him a chance.
Well,
Yeah,
this is
that's
when
what I
Ted
heard.
again starts yelling at Brad, who he thinks is a guest and not an employee. And he's telling her how, guests like you come and ride some old horse for a week and you go home happy. But, a real cowboy like myself needs to do things like this. And it takes a lot of bravery to do what I do. And this is when she now walks up and jumps on Rocket herself. And it was weird because this is the scene where you find out, oh, she can ride the horse. but it's just like these slow motion clips of her on it. Like, I thought the effect used there was really bad.
It's slow motion with inspirational music. It completely tonally shifts here.
Yeah, it just didn't work. Like, I understand what this buildup was all for, but the execution of showing her on the horse just slowly, like, smiling as it's in, like, it made no sense.
Yeah, it's very, very weird.
It was probably a stunt double, and then they just
Well,
didn't
it's
want
a
you to
close up
see
of her, like, on it. They never really get into a wide shot anyways of the horse, like, doing anything crazy.
I think more fun would have been instead of her just riding a horse normally, like people do on horses, if she was doing like the Annie Oakley tricks where she was doing like flips down the side of the horse and everything, where they just like went hot shots with it. She was just like a total weird horse performer.
And when she does jump off the horse, Ted's like, "Who are you?" Like, and she's like, "I'm Brad, the new riding instructor." And his reaction to that is, "Oh, so great. It looks like we're going to have the whole summer to get to know each other." So now that he knows she's not a guest, he's no longer yelling at her and now flirting with her.
I think it would have been a little more effective if they didn't have the melody scene earlier, and we found that out too.
Yeah, that would have been better editing, probably.
You could say that he had mud on his face.
Yep. And so, you know, then at that point, Ted extends his hand and asks her to, you know, help him out of the mud. And when she goes to grab his hand, he pulls her in. And at that moment, is that cute and flirty, or is he a complete douchebag?
Douchebag.
Both.
Mud sandwich. He starts humping her in the mud.
I would have said, don't be such a stick in the mud and pull it down. That would have been much more effective.
No mud puns.
I got plenty of mud puns.
No,
I got more mud puns.
I really now want to make an S1E1 shirt that says mud puns with the circle and the slash through it. Or like one of those signs, it's like, you know, days with 0 incidents at the workplace. It's like how many days with no mud puns on S1E1. Every episode, Gordo sadly has to erase the chalkboard.
We've gone 0 days without our last mud pun. From there, Lucy walks up and she sees what's, you know, everything that had happened with Rocket. And Ted says Brad was innocent and it was all him. And Lucy's like, "Well, that's funny because I count 4 of you here," you know, referencing the fact that Danny and Melody are also there. And she tells him that she's not going to be telling Mr. Ernst, but she does have a punishment picked out for them.
Yeah, and this is where this show goes in a different direction.
I think you said that with a "Hey dude" accent.
Different direction.
Hey, Lucy.
So, but then at this point, Ted asks if he gets preferential treatment for being senior staff. So
See,
a
there was
minute
no
ago,
payoff to that. I didn't like
there was no payoff to the senior staff thing at all. Yeah, but
They never
2
explained
seconds
why
ago,
Brad has money either.
They do
No.
later on, not in
I'm
this
sure
episode.
they will later on.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not too important for episode 1, I guess.
One thing I do love, though, is that, not to jump ahead, I know we always say that, but, like, just if you look up Brad, it's like, Brad's rich. She's from Minnesota, which is, like, obviously there are rich people in Minnesota, but, like, that just seems like a funny place to be like, you know where the rich people are.
Yeah.
The Twin Cities. Like, okay, sure, fuck.
I thought
Not to, you know, crap on any of our listeners from the great state of Minnesota.
well, we're
I'm very
not.
pro
Yeah,
Minnesota.
yeah.
It's just not what a sitcom usually goes for, is, like, their place of rich people.
Didn't
No.
sound like you were pro Minnesota.
The home
Sounds
of
like
Gordon
Minnesota.
Bombay. Yeah, the Minnesota Miracle Man. But no, there was
Minnesota.
a moment earlier where he's like, "Hey, listen, it was me. She had nothing to do with it. Like, I'm going to take all the heat here." Then we find out all 4 of them are going to get in trouble for this, not just the 2 of them. And then Ted's like, "Well, do I get preferential treatment because I'm senior staff?" So he went from I'm going to fall on the sword for everybody to "You're going to go easy on me, right?"
And then they started picking up caca.
So when he said that though, I thought she says, "Yeah, sure, Ted," and I have a special like job for you. I was expecting them to be like washing something and him be scooping up like horse shit. But they're all the next scene they go to, they're all doing the same job.
Yeah, they're all
that's
just
what I mean.
cleaning
There
out
was
a
no
stable.
payoff to that.
They should have been, like, eating ice cream, and he should have been cleaning the horse stalls, and they should have been, like, watching from a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that's all it was the 4 of them cleaning out like a stable. Ted says, you know, if Brad didn't have to show off, they would have got out of there before Lucy showed up. And I'm like, this piece of shit. This is his fault, and now that they're cleaning the stable, and again, a minute ago he's going to take all the blame, and now he's saying this is all Brad's fault because she was showing off.
They also could have been out of there if he didn't pull her into the mud.
Yes, also true.
Yeah, they could have been up and gone.
And he had also said things about like, if she just told me that she worked here, I wouldn't have had to try to impress her. And she's like,
Melody really mad.
yeah, she's like, if you stopped talking for a second, I would have had a chance to. She then goes and does to Danny and Melody, we should treat this cowboy with the respect he deserves. And they do the little gag where they, the three of them all start spraying him with hoses until he, falls backwards because he was kind of just sitting on the rail there.
Should have fallen backwards into the trough again.
He takes a decent bump, though. He, takes a flat back.
This guy must have had to change his clothes 50 times for this episode. They throw dirt all over him. They throw him in water twice. They spray him down with water once. They throw him in mud once.
Right, plus I'm sure there's probably a gene mishap during that first sandwich incident.
Okay. And then the final scene we get is we cut to Mr. Ernst, who's just kind of outside with a metal bucket because he's going to use some horse medicine to make a foot bath for his sore feet. And he flags Danny over and asks him, like, hey, what do you think about using this stuff? Buddy found it in one of the barns or whatever. And he's like, well, this is for a horse. I wouldn't recommend you use it because this could burn you really badly. And
A horse's feet are so tough.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And humans' feet, for the most part, are very, very tender.
Horses' feet are so rough that we literally nail metal to them.
Right, and they're just like, whatever. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
So, yeah, Mr. Ernst, despite asking Danny what he thought, and Danny tells him exactly what he thinks about the situation, that it's not a good idea, goes, I'm going to do it anyways. So now it closes out with him just dumping some of this, old horse elixir into a metal drum, and he just dips his feet in it, and you get, that first kind of shot of relief from him when he first gets his feet in the water, and then a couple seconds pass, and he just starts screaming in pain.
I can
Oh, no,
only
I thought he
imagine
was
that's
having,
some kind
an
of
orgasm.
acid, right?
Yeah, they said it would probably burn.
I thought he was having an orgasm right there.
You think this episode ended with him having an orgasm?
Yeah, because he went, oh.
Yeah, and then his mouth widened because
Yeah,
it
then
was
he went,
burning.
ah!
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He does.
This is also when you discover that Mr. Ernst has the largest mouth on Earth.
How many micro machines you could fit in there?
But not only did he burn his feet, now because he uses the whole bottle, now some poor horse has to deal with rot.
That's the saddest part of the whole episode. Poor Rocket's
Oh, really?
got
Not you
rot
talking
foot.
about how the dog's dead 50 times? Fictitious horse rot is way worse.
We're sorry, Rocket. We didn't want to take you to the glue factory, but you're rotten from the legs up.
And that
Say
was
hello to Elmer for me.
that was the end of the episode, other than the fact that it closes with an instrumental version of the song and the credits rolling over still shots of the episode.
Fucking catchy. It's so catchy, that song. It's
It's
ridiculous.
in my head right now.
Yeah, it's
gonna
gonna
be
be in
humming
there
it
for
for
a
a
while.
month.
I know the times are different, and we talk about when you talk about different eras, you have to kind of give a pass for quality of the way things look. But they were using still frames from the episode to roll over the credits, and some of them were straight up fuzzy mid-movement shots. It's why'd you use that one?
That's something Nickelodeon did a lot. A lot of their shows, they ended with the stills from the thing.
Yeah, that's fine, but use a still where they're not mid-motion when the
Use one
when
that's still.
where the arm is fuzzy. Yeah, find one where no one was really
As
moving
somebody
much.
who has spent countless hours editing, I imagine it ended like some of my editing sessions with, fuck it, who cares?
So
It
that
ended
was
with you putting your feet in a rot bucket and screaming.
and that was the conclusion of the episode. Not much else that I have to say personally about Hey Dude, other than looking
Hey,
back
Jay.
at it now.
Got him again.
You didn't get me again. It's a pause because I can't talk over it.
Oh my god.
So to go back, the thing about Hey Dude that kind of got me was the fact that it was 65 episodes and 5 seasons. Because I didn't realize that the show ran that long.
That threw me off too, but also the 5 seasons were only between 3 years.
Yeah, that's what threw me off.
It's
I
one of
would
those.
assume maybe season 1 is like 4 episodes.
Yeah, that
might be like
happens.
a pilot season.
But you look back at a lot of these shows from our youth, and you remember them being like this kind of length, and then you realize such and such show went 14 episodes, and you went, "That's it, really?" And this is the total opposite, where I thought Hey Dude was probably like a couple seasons, because I think like Salute Your Shorts only had like a few seasons out of them, right?
Yeah, well, my brother and me, we've talked about before doing on the show, which will be a waste
you,
because we
Daddy.
can't do the best episode of that show. But we looked it up once, and it was like ran for one summer in like 7 episodes. It was like, oh, how? That doesn't sound right. But when you're a kid, you just don't track that sort of
That's
stuff.
because 99% of Nickelodeon was stuff in syndication. Their own stuff in syndication.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But to think this show ran as long as it did kind of surprised me that they got 65 episodes out of it. That's a
Yeah.
fairly decent run for any show. It's not like monumental, but
Yeah.
not bad.
And I
Is
remember,
that like a Nickelodeon thing? Like that they would film that much of a chunk together? Like, because I wonder if they're on Nickelodeon's not really on kind of the traditional network television sitcom schedule that like we're used to.
Well, they
With, like, a
definitely
summer-
film differently because I know, not to get ahead, I know Ted leaves for a while, and I think that was a contract dispute, and then they bring in Kyle and
Yeah.
Jake, or
If you
Jed,
look,
whatever his name was.
Everybody was in 65 episodes except for Ted, who was in 55 episodes.
And he does come back.
Yeah, he comes back to the new characters, and he's like, oh, man.
I'm trying to think of the last time I'd seen this. And we mentioned before that I bought the DVDs, so now I have access to watching more of it. But the last time I would have seen it when it was out of syndication, right? Because these shows were on when we were kids a lot, and then they were just not on, right? Like, it's like they banished this
Yeah.
and Salute Your Shorts and those shows. You just couldn't see them. But then in the summer, sometimes they would like spin a wheel, and it would be like classic Nickelodeon, and then they'd play like, randomly in the middle of the day, an episode of this or an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Well, that's the good thing about Paramount Plus is it has all those shows.
I feel like I just need to cave and get it.
I'm about to. I canceled Netflix, and I canceled Disney Plus, so
Yeah,
I can get a new one.
I'm sick of paying for all these different streaming services at this point, but I just want to watch all the old Nickelodeon stuff now and Bar Rescue.
All the Bar Rescue we can watch, Joe.
I've missed like 3 seasons of Bar Rescue and I hate it.
Yeah, so I guess now I guess there's nothing left to do than go to the green light or cancel. So I'm going to go in the order I see you guys in. Gordo, starting with you.
This is a very hard cancel for me. I didn't like this show when it was on, and looking back at it, I was excited to watch it because I was like, maybe I'm misremembering it. No, I still don't like it. Everybody was just too wooden. Like the acting was just wooden. It didn't grab me. I'm trying to think of looking at it from like a younger perspective. I didn't like it back then. I don't like it now. So cancel for me.
Ferg.
As a kid, see, I remember watching this and thinking these were like the coolest kids in the world. So I got to put myself back into, that frame of mind, the mind of a child. You know what? They were some pretty cool kids. So, I know Danny does get better, and this is based 100% on nostalgia. Green light. Boom.
Joe.
We mentioned earlier different ways to think about this show, and I said, what if I was to show this to somebody who was this age? On nostalgia, I would greenlight this. I did enjoy it, and I did want to relive watching it, but when I thought of a little kid too, I would still greenlight it. Because I think one of the most important things about this show and why it would still work for kids now, look, there's going to be hits and misses with this stuff because it's 30 years ago. But by placing it somewhere like a dude ranch, where half of the time, especially after this episode, you're going to have people in Western wear, you're not going to see any cars, you're not going to see any city, and you're not going to get a lot of references to things that are happening in real time. So it almost makes it timeless in a way, where it's a bunch of teenagers dressed like cowboys doing cowboy stuff on a ranch, and there's nobody walking around being like 1992 stuff or whatever, right? So I think that this, more than a show like Welcome Freshmen, more than Salute Your Shorts, can exist, and you could show it to a kid and they might enjoy it more than something like that, because it does live in its own weird world that doesn't have a time frame attached to it. So I'm going to greenlight it. I actually really did enjoy rewatching this. I thought it was going to hurt to relive this, and then I was going to be sad that I hated it.
Are you going to continue the box set?
I am going to continue the DVD set, yeah. So green light for me.
Nick.
This is a really hard one. I've been like thinking about it since I watched it. I didn't formulate an answer, green light or cancel, until like right before we started recording, because I could not think of how I wanted to go with it. I didn't like it. I really didn't. And then like a few of you have talked about, you really do have to put yourself in the position of who this show was made for. And I think when you do, it does work. Show was not obviously meant for us, but from a younger perspective, I do think it works. If you put this up against the other Nickelodeon shows of its time, I think it's at the bottom of the list, but there is just enough there, I think, for me to give it the green light. It's strange because I'm not reeling to go watch another episode of it. I did feel the nostalgia. A lot of the characters kind of, sparked the nostalgia in me. I forgot about them, and it was nice to see. So, yeah, is it the best show on Nickelodeon or that we've... No, it's not even close, but it is in the green light for me because I think there's enough there, to keep it going, to keep it interesting, especially for a kid. So, green light for me.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going with the majority of you, and I'm going to give it a green light as well. So watching it, just me, Jay watching it, for nostalgia, I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was light and easy to watch. But we talked before we even recorded about what's the right way to judge these shows. And like you guys were touching on, let's look through the eyes of a kid. And then on top of it, let's look through the eyes of a kid 30 years ago. So I think for those reasons, we all liked it. It's not cringy. There's like little points. The fucking dry humping was a little weird. But other than that, like, it's all lighthearted. It's easy comedy, simple jokes. I think there's a lot to be said about what Joe was talking about earlier, that there is a way that I could easily see them making a brand new Hey Dude, because you could kind of film it the same way and it works in the timelessness of how it's shot. You could just update the show really easy. You could make a new version of the show without doing a lot of things different. So I think for all those reasons, it just makes sense to greenlight it. And it's not just on nostalgia. I think it's just a show that you could show a kid now, and other than the fact that it's a little older, a little grainier, I think you could hold a kid's interest, even in a more fast-paced, wild, TikTok-y world where everything's very 2 seconds long. Maybe something a little slower and about the West might be a little tougher to grab them at first, but I think the comedy was there. So, with that being said, Gordo's all on his own on this one.
Yeah, take that cowboy hat off, you city slicker.
Yeah.
You dude.
So 4 out of 5 give it the green light. So congratulations to Dude Ranch, to Hey Dude.
Hey, Jay.
You continue on to episode 2 with us at S1E1. But that's it. That's all the time we have for this week. I want to remind you guys once again, go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to give us a listen. That's where you can go to watch us on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere that we post anything. Follow us, subscribe, rate, review, all of that stuff. I say it every week, but I can't stress it enough. Please do all those things because it legitimately helps us out. So we are putting in this work for you. Please give us the return on the investment there. Just give us a follow. We're not asking for much. Twitter's free. Instagram's free. We see the downloads going up, so we would like to see our socials go up a little bit more too, just because that's a lot easier for us to interact with you guys with. But that being said, we appreciate all of you who listen every week. Tune in again next week where we'll have another new episode for you. But that's all the time we have for this week. So thank you guys. Goodbye.
I think we got the best fat like Santa.
The best killer cacti.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
In the books, cooked it.